Okay, welcome to Parker Automotive. Sorry about my voice. Today we're working on a 04 Ford F-150 with the 5.4 motor. These are common problems on these motors. What happens is it's got cam phasers, and on here, because it's got two chains, it's got one for the left bank one and one for bank two. Usually what happens is people don't maintain them correctly. You should have the chain done every 1,000 miles, or between 80 and 100,000 miles. This vehicle, the customer actually told us after we started the diagnosis, which I wish we'd have told us beforehand, and this is something that you should do also if you have the same problems. That he had the vehicle for give or take 2.5 years, almost 3 years, but he only changed the oil in it two times. Bad decision on a 5.4. Anyway, the vehicle came in, he had it at another shop. He stated that he paid about $1,000 to get work done. The thing is, he had unrelated items done to the vehicle and not a drivability concern, possibly a starting concern, but sometimes it's hard to delegate information from the customer, and you don't always know what's going on. So he had an alternator put in here and a battery put in. He had a evap tube put onto the vehicle also. The second time he went back. Fast forward, he came into here. He had a misfire, and he had multiple codes. And I'm just going to go through it so you understand. He had a PO22, which is a variable timing sensor code, or a cam position code, but on here it's a variable timing. On bank 2, which is the left-hand bank on this side. With that, he also had some mass airflows and some lean codes. But the majority of it, he was getting a random PO300, PO305, 06, 07, and 08, which would be bank 2, misfire on every cylinder, all 4 cylinders. He also had a startup code, which is a PO316, and a bunch of rich and stuck lean O2 sensor codes. He's got multiple other codes, but these were the ones that we were going to delegate. Now, what I have to do during this is I have to figure out, has it got a bad head gasket? Because the first thing you would think, if you're getting the misfires all on one side, and this is a V motor, that it could possibly be a head gasket. On these also, these have plugs that sit into the head. They're pretty deep, and normally what happens is they break off, and that's what I'm going to show you real quick during my diagnosis. Let me get on here real quick. So these are the plugs that come in there. Now what happens normally is on this, you go and you take the screw out, and what happens is it'll actually pull all the way through. You see how all 4 of them broke off, but they break off just like this. Usually what's left on the inside left on the inside is just the tip. Now there is a tool that you use to take these out, which that's how I brought them out. What you do is first, you kind of use this tool. It screws into the head itself, and what it'll do is it'll push the porcelain part of the spark plug down through, and like you can see, it does come out, but then it'll actually grab. This one's a little bit better to see. Let me see something. Try to show you the better one. Yeah, well, this one broke. And this is how it should go out, like this, where it'll grab it. This is what the tool does. So what happens is you push that into, this will screw into the block itself. You make sure it's fully retracted, and then it'll push in the porcelain part. Then what you do is you actually got the next piece, which you'll go is an extractor. So what happens is you just screw it in there, it grabs onto the end, and then you pull it out. So it'll pull this piece out of the head itself, and that way you can reinstall new plugs. Now, the reason why the plugs and every one of them broke off, it's common on these because people don't never change their plugs. And what happens is, just like you just seen, you go and you take these out, it breaks off from the bottom of here. It'll break off. This is how it's supposed to be. But usually what happens is, from it being stuck in there for so long, it breaks off. And ergo, the broken plug on the inside. Okay, so now the reason why I took those out was so that I could do a compression test. Initially, I did a compression test on just this side. I didn't do the other side. I just did a compression test. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video is because it's conflicting. What happened was I got compression and somewhat okay. I think between like 140 to about 160. 160 is after it got hot, you know, after letting it, cranking it over a bunch of times. So, but all my compression across each one, each cylinder was relative, meaning I was within $1.60 to $1.40 on each one. If I would have got different readings, then I would have thought, okay, we would have investigated a little bit further. But because I had good compression, or not good compression, but I had stable compression across the board, I didn't go any further. I removed the valve cover, and I checked the variable timing sensor, because on these vehicles, it's also common for the variable timing sensors to go bad. During that pulling off, I brought it up to number one, or top dead center, and this is after I had the valve cover off, and I did note that that the chain was loose. You can actually get to, I wish I would have kept it apart. I put it back together because we don't know if the customer's the repair is probably going to exceed the value of the vehicle. It was an 04. Anyway, you can get to the chain tensioner. There's a guide on both sides. But the guide that's on the inside, it moves back and forth because there's an actuator right there that keeps tension on it. It was real pliable. On the inside, I could also see where the chain was actually rubbing on the timing cover itself. Okay, so fast forward, before I went any further, I decided to do a leak down test just to confirm that it was literally just the timing being off and the cam phasers being bad. It's a common problem. You just replace the timing chains and all timing components and the phasers. You never just replace just the change, replace everything. Okay, so I did a leak down test on it. And though I had good, somewhat relative compression all the way across, which would indicate that there was no head gasket leak, I did a leak down test, and every cylinder all the way across, it didn't leak internally into the intake chamber, but it leaked through the exhaust valves. So what was happening is the exhaust valves are actually not seating. Now, it could be that there's carbon buildup on there because the vehicle has been running like that, and it's causing the valves to not seat onto the head. But each valve, because this is a 3-valve, so there's 2 intakes and 1 exhaust. The exhaust is not fully seated, and it is leaking through there. So after further, investigating, the only thing I could do to really confirm that the seats just got carbon on it would be to pull the head. And it can be extensive, or we replace the motor. Because this is a common problem, and there is TSBs for the shop key for the for this same concern. They say replace with a short block, long block. Bad deal. I guess what I'm trying to say is, before you go and change the timing chain on 5.4, possibly because you feel that the timing is off, you better go to a little bit further. I'm lucky I did. I went with a leak down test so I could confirm that it was just timing was off. Compression was good. And really, it's not. I went up on each top dead center on each cylinder, and literally each cylinder was leaking from the exhaust valves, which I've never really seen that before. Usually got one or two, but it's every one. Now, from what I'm understanding is if the phasers, the cam phasers, are actually loosened up, which then causes this damage, this internal damage. It's a mechanical problem, not electronic. And I was a little confused because I did a compression test on it, and I had halfway decent compression. I mean, give or take $160. Really, I guess it could be even closer to 200, but it was relative all the way across the board. Usually, if you got a bad head gasket or valves are completely open, you get less compression. But in this case, it didn't, and that's where it confused me. That's why I went further, and I figured we'd do a timing chain. But here, it's a mechanical internal problem. The only way to really fix it would be pull the head, send the head out, have the head machined, the valves cleaned, or the valve springs most likely, because when you bring up the top dead, you're going to see that there's no pressure from the cam followers on the intakes or on the exhaust. So with those springs fully up, the valve should be fully seated. The only thing that could be is that there's a lot of carbon buildup on there. Really, it's a hard deal without pulling it apart. And this is another problem. Some people don't understand that in order for me to break it down to complete failure, I know all the symptoms and I know all the problems that it's having, but I don't know the full extent of the failure unless I remove the head, which then means that it gets a head gasket, and then send it out. Or do it myself, but logically it's just easier to send it out and have them do it. And that's about it. So, and then also the problem, he's got other issues going on here. I actually tried my best to deter my customer and send him back to his previous mechanic. In all events, if you're going to work on a vehicle after someone's had their hands in it for 2 times and still couldn't figure it out, it may be best to try to push the customer into, is the truck worth it before it goes any further. This gentleman invested new exhaust, brakes, alternator. He's got probably about $2,000 into it, and now he wants to go even further. We try our best here. Anyway, I'm not trying to teach you how or what to do on vehicles, how to work on vehicles. I'm just trying to give you little pointers. I wish we didn't have it apart. I put it back together because we have to get the vehicle running so I can move it in and out until we get a decision. But that's a good fix. That's a good call. Unless I pull the head off and I see point of failure. But all the strategy, the diagnostic strategy is all there. Compression, somewhat okay. But a leak down test showed that the exhaust valves aren't seating correctly. The only way to follow it even further is to pull the head. So that being said, God bless you, God bless America, and stay safe.